My name is Denise Garcia. Thank you all for being here today. On behalf of the PTA, we want to say thank you for making the time and scheduling parent-child pickups and doing all those other things that we typically do to ensure that our children are getting where they need to be. This initiative is the work of a collaboration between the PTA, which you're all a part of. This also is a collaboration between the SIS leadership and members of the marketing team, the IT team, some members of our PTA who are very diligent in ensuring that this would be a successful event. Does everybody speak English? Would you like me to also say this in Spanish? Intentaré. ¿Está bien? Esto es una colaboración. Primero, bienvenidos. Bienvenidos a esta presentación de parte, es una colaboración entre la PTA y la escuela. Carmelo, Abby, varias personas individuales han hecho mucho esfuerzo a establecer esta presentación. Es algo que se ha establecido por la PTA, una serie de presentaciones que vamos a tener, empezando con esta. Esta es la primera. Básicamente la primera que hemos tenido de una serie de presentaciones que vamos a tener siguiendo más al final del año y ojalá sigamos con estas oportunidades en el año que viene. In English now. As parents and educators, we are faced with the issue of digital resilience and managing digital family. This is why we thought in the PTA that hearing from the ParentZone, Sophie Lennington and Jay Skeets, experts in the field, was the right move for our SIS community. Today you will hear from the experts. Later this week, parents and educators, there's some educators in the room, will receive access to the ParentZone's digital schools membership, which is a resource that all parents will have so that you can go online and get tips on apps our children are using, systems our children are using, services our children are using. Basically, a resource portal for everyone to use. Carmelo, voy a necesitar ayuda en traducir todo esto.
A ver. Vale, bueno, que parte de este proyecto va a haber varias sesiones y también va a haber una serie de recursos online que podéis acceder. A través de la PTA, ellos han organizado y han sponsorizado el acceso para que tengáis recursos, tanto vídeos como presentaciones, como de póster o ideas o guías, para que podáis hacer un uso más completo de las tecnologías en casa y más seguro.
Yes. Our reliance on technology and online presence grows daily. For this reason, the presentation is entitled Online and Me. It's a play on ONme. Why is that? Because it is on me as a parent, it is on me as a student, and it is on me as an educator to ensure that we understand how to educate ourselves, create a positive online profile, and how to navigate technology because it is not going away.
Vale. Bueno, la presentación es ONme porque queremos desarrollar destrezas para que puedan hacer nuestros alumnos y también nosotros o vuestros hijos un uso bueno no solo de las tecnologías, sino también del acceso a Internet. Esto no solo desempeñamos el rol como padres o como profesores, sino también como alumnos, porque muchas de estas tendencias se desarrollan, van cambiando día a día. Y el estar actualizado y el tener presente cómo evoluciona la tecnología nos permite a nosotros no tanto controlar, sino también saber ayudar y dar apoyo o soporte a nuestros alumnos o nuestros hijos.
I want to give a special thanks before we move on to the PTA for actually funding. There's many members of the PTA here today, and since this was the first time, this was an opportunity for them to try something new. So, number one, all of you, thank you for funding this event.
Bueno, pues queríamos dar las gracias en primer lugar a los miembros del PTA porque han puesto mucho trabajo, mucho esfuerzo y además han intentado pues conseguir todo este tipo de recursos para que tengáis un acceso más directo a la información sobre las tecnologías, sobre el uso de las tecnologías. a todos los miembros del PTA
Y el liderazgo
y
de la escuela también.
Y al equipo directivo del centro, que lo hemos intentado coordinar para que sea lo más efectivo para nosotros, tanto para vuestros hijos, alumnos, como profesores y los padres que cierran el ciclo de las profesoras.
Exacto. At the end of Sophie's presentation today, we will have a Q&A opportunity. So please take this opportunity to ask the experts. This is an opportunity for you to have access to people who have this knowledge, which they have resources of.
Que bueno, que al final de esta sesión que va a liderar Sophie, vaya a tener la oportunidad de preguntar y tener respuestas de los expertos sobre cuestiones que os preocupen relacionadas con este tema.
And don't forget, later this week, you should be receiving, likely either in our newsletter, not only the taped version of this presentation, but you will all, every member of the SIS community, the parents and the leadership and the educators will receive access, login access to the ParentZone Digital Families membership, right? So they call it the Parent Lounge. And this is a portal that will allow you to get all the tips, all the information that you need, and they are also a resource if you have questions that you want to email them.
Bueno, al final, seguramente el transcurso de esta semana, más seguramente en la newsletter, encontraréis información. Nosotros lo estamos también intentando grabar para tener esta sesión recogida y toda la información sobre el Parent Portal, es decir, una página web que es de ParentZone.
Parent Lounge.
Parent Lounge. Tendréis información que podéis acceder de forma más regular. Y todo esto está sponsorizado por el PTA que ha tenido esta iniciativa de esta presentación.
So without further ado, let me stop talking and let me introduce Sophie Lennington. Sophie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Deneen. I'm afraid I pretty much have hello, goodbye, please and thank you in Spanish. That's completely my bad. What I'm going to try and do though is stick to the slides as much as possible. So our approach at ParentZone is to help parents feel more confident about engaging with and talking to their children about their online life. So the approach we take is really preparing our children for the future. We can't just prepare them for now. We can't just think about the skills that they need now when it comes to technology. We need to prepare them for their digital life. And so the approach we take is to think about 3 key digital life skills that as parents you can start to bring into your conversations, your thinking around how you communicate with your children about technology. So you may well be using technology, but it's likely you'll be using it in a very different way to your children, just because they have grown up with it. Dennis very kindly picked us up from the airport. I was talking about how pleased I was that when I was a teenager, there was no social media. Because it's a lot for our teenagers to be managing. It's a complex world with lots of opportunities, so the earlier we can start, see some young boys at the back, the better. So the more we can get this into everyday part of family life, that we're engaged and enthusiastic about what our children like to do online, that we're helping them by setting some rules and boundaries, that we're helping them think about how to manage this, not just for now, but for their future as well. So, the 3 digital life skills that I'm going to talk to you today about are critical thinking skills, confident communication, and capable tool use. So, in the UK, children's education about online safety has very much been about rules and tools, and a lot of children have been told what not to do online. So don't overshare your information, don't give out your passwords, don't do this, don't do that, with not very much guidance on how we actually want them to be. So we try to bring a new approach to online safety in its broadest form. So tomorrow when we're meeting with the students, we will be encouraging them to think about these 3 skills as well. Critical thinking in the online space is very hard. You will know adults who make mistakes when they're online as much as children and young people struggle. And part of the problem is that there isn't any time to stop and think about the decisions that you're making. So technology is designed to make you want to be there all of the time. I'm sure you all know where your phone is right now. It's on you all of the time. It's designed in that way. So for adults, sometimes that's hard to pull yourself away from the phone. Much harder if you're a child who has poor impulse control, wants to be in contact with their friends all of the time. Those are the sorts of things that we need to help our children manage, because it's a complex world. And the fact that everything is very instant. So you can instantly respond to messages that you get sent, you can like, share, follow. All of these things take a lot of thought in a space where there really isn't time to stop and think. And that for children and young people is the critical thinking. It's about the decisions that they make when they're online. So why is this a digital life skill? So we may be concerned about our children spending too much time online, sending images potentially that they shouldn't be sending, being bullied online, or even harder for parents to think about, their child being bullied. And the problem with online, the complication with online communication is that it can be read in so many different ways. So one of the things that we do with children, and Jenny is one of our senior trainers who is in school every day doing sessions, particularly with younger children, to think about how they communicate online. So I read something and I take it in a very different way to how it was meant, and these are complicated things for our children to be managing. We also might be concerned that they might be falling for being victims of cybercrime because of the amount of information that they're giving away, or that idea that there is no time to stop and that you might be tempted to click on a link or download something that then ends up giving access to personal information. So what is it that we are trying to encourage? What are the things that we want our children to be able to do? And the earlier we can start this, the better. So if you have children in the lower years of school, this is the perfect time to start thinking about, how do I talk to my children about this? If you have teenagers, as I do at home, it's not too late. It may seem like the gap is much bigger, but actually there are still things that you can be doing to help them think about how they make those good decisions online, and most importantly, what they do if something goes wrong. So our sessions tomorrow with the students will be about making good enough decisions, but also knowing that they can come to you if something goes wrong. And we know that lots of young people do not tell their parents if something goes wrong, if they make a mistake, if they share something, if they say something, because, well, I'm sure you know the power of the phone. So if the thing that hangs over children's heads is that their phone will be taken away. So they are less likely to tell you if they think that's going to be your first response. So a lot of this comes down to our first response as parents. If you hear something scary that your child has done, or something stupid from experience that your child has done online, the first response that your child hears will mean the difference between them coming and telling you anything again in the future, or thinking, no, I can't talk to this person. So really, although it's about technology, the most important thing is your relationship with your children. And you're all here today, so I know that this is something that you really think is important. So critical thinkers are able to identify reliable sources. So that's not just for education or for their homework, it's about every single question. You have probably said, as I have many times as a parent, if you don't know the answer, just Google it. That means that children need to know how to make a decision once they've got a search page up of who do they trust, what's reliable information. How can they tell what it is that they're looking at, and whether it's factual, whether it's opinion? All of these are complicated things that children have to learn. Now, they will be doing some of this in school, but this is something that parents can help with as well. We want to be raising children who don't take anything at face value. And children have said to me before, oh, you want me to be suspicious of everything? And I said, yes, I do, because you don't know who is giving you that message. And the best thing, particularly younger children, can do is check it out with you. So if they have a question, that maybe you go to Google together and you find the answer, or you pick up a book. I know it's radical, but maybe a book. But sometimes it's doing it together and talking about how you would make a decision about what you're seeing and passing that on to your children, so that you feel confident that the next time they have a question and you're not there, that they will be looking for reliable sources of information, and that they understand the difference between fact and opinion. And I know certainly in my own social media, on my own circle of friends and acquaintances, that lots of adults struggle with that. Particularly in the online space, there is an awful lot of content that is not reliable, that is someone's opinion that has been put forward as fact. So helping children understand that, particularly as teenagers get older and they move further away from us. It's sad, but it's true, it's what happens. And they're more reliant on their peers or the content that they see online. So if they have sensitive questions that they want answers to and they don't feel that they can come to us, they are going to go online. So we need to make sure that they know how to do these things, that they know not to believe everything that they see, and that they know to question those things, and importantly, come to you for some help. So how can you encourage critical thinking in your children? Showing them. So showing them stuff in the news, explaining to them how you make decisions about choices. So an example from my own home, my poor children, I use them as examples all of the time. So my 15-year-old son wants muscles, so he's very into bodybuilding and keeping fit. But his critical thinking skills are not good. Because of the need that he has, he wants those quick fixes. And you will know online, there are loads of quick fixes for looking better, being more intelligent, losing weight, gaining muscles. And all of, as adults, we know there are no quick fixes. You know, it's hard work. But the online space can often make children seem like, or adults sometimes, that there are quick fixes. So we can help our children by explaining to them, actually, let's have a better look at that content together. So when he comes and tells me that he needs to eat this protein and have these drinks, and I'm glad that he still comes to talk to me, which is a good thing, but actually sitting down with him, explaining how to make a decision about all of this content that you see. And children will go online to find this information. It's a very natural way for them. It's kind of part of how they learn, but also because it's there all of the time, it's a very instant thing. So showing them, explaining to them, and encouraging them to come to you. So if they have a question, it may be that you go to Google together, but encouraging them to debate as well. You're never always going to agree with your children. There will be times when there are things that you disagree with, but actually if you just shut down the conversation, you drive them to, poor Google, I keep talking about Google, you drive them online rather than helping to have some dialogue. The important bit, the parenting, the thing that you bring that the online space does not. That is your knowledge of your children, your expertise. You are the experts in your children. So you will know the things that they're interested in, and you will know the best way to help them. So we do have a teaching role. We have a role in teaching our children and setting a good example. So you may have rules in your house about no phones at mealtime or no tech on Sundays, whatever the rules are that suit your family best. we all have to stick to them. We can't set family rules and then, as happens in my house, Dad is sneaking a look at his phone when it's No Tech Sunday and we are watching a film together. Because we're not setting a good example for our children. And you will know, they come to us, they look to us for examples. So we have to be consistent, and that's the hard, boring bit of being a parent, as you all know, is keeping those boundaries, sticking to those things that actually make children feel looked after, cared for. They sometimes don't see it that way, but actually does really help them feel contained. And if we're never talking to our children about what it is that they love about the online space, their favourite YouTubers, their favourite games, they may well think that we don't care about this very important part of their lives, and that's not true. You're all here. And the reason critical thinking skills help is that we want children to enjoy the great content that's online. We want them to be able to learn new skills and develop friendships. And we want them to know how to share content in the safest way possible. They will make mistakes. And the important thing is that they recognise when or if they've made a mistake, and that they come to you or another trusted adult to help sort that out. Because we want them to be able to be exploring. And we know that children who are in school now, a vast percentage of them will do jobs that don't even exist now. And it's likely that technology will be a huge part of whatever job they do. So they are going to need to feel confident about making good decisions in the online space. So that's very briefly critical thinking. So confident communication. And this is communication online, so how they communicate with their peers, with other people, with people that they don't know when they're online, but also the very important bit of how they communicate with you about what it is that they're doing online. So it's important because this is top of the list for me as a parent of teenage boys, is that they may not tell us when something goes wrong online. They may hold on to it, and we know that a problem that's just held on to is never going to be fixed. We also worry that they may be getting into arguments online. So I don't know if any of you have children who game and have a headset and seem to be just shouting all of the time. That's certainly the experience in my house, that the conversation that goes with the game is often quite high volume and very excited, but also the way that some messages could be misread by someone, the whole instant nature of sending messages, particularly in groups. It's quite a hard thing for children to manage. So you will know if you're in WhatsApp groups that sometimes there's a lot of messages, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for young people. And these are the new kind of digital life skills that we need to help them manage. We need to help them know, do you have to read every single message that's there? Are there things that they can do to come out of groups where they're feeling overwhelmed by messages? All of these are new skills, and for the first time in parenting, we are all learning them together. So every other aspect of parenting, we're the experts. We're the experts in sleep and food and education and behaviour and the digital space. We are kind of running alongside our children. So it's a new space for all of us. And for some parents, that's a scary thing. But I think if you can come at it from a parenting perspective, that actually what we want to do is improve communication between us and our children, then the tech doesn't matter. It's just a different way for them to be communicating. And particularly if we think about the world that our children are growing up in. Now, I don't know this area, I live in London. I don't want my teenage boys out and about in the evening. I want them home where they're safe, where I can see where they are. So social media and gaming becomes even more important. This is how young people are managing and developing their friendships and their relationships. So we need to understand what they need in order to manage this in a good way. And confident communication is going to be key. And something that you may worry about, I certainly worry about this, talking to people that they shouldn't be talking to, or just not knowing how to manage strangers online. So, what does a confident communicator look like? So we want to be raising children who can talk about anything that they see online that upsets or worries them. So as I said earlier, most children and young people won't tell their parents if something goes wrong because they think that the tech will be taken away. So if we can shift towards, I was saying to Dennis in the car on the way here, that first deep breath that you take as a parent when you hear something scary or worrying, and you say, "Thank you for telling me," as your first thing, rather than, "Oh, why did you do that?" Which is a perfectly legitimate response as a parent to be worried about your child. But if you can make your first response something that means your child will continue talking to you, then you've kept that door open, you've kept that communication open. We also want to help children share positive content online and are nice to each other. We want children who know how to communicate in a supportive, positive, friendly way when they're online, despite some of the adult role models, not you, but other people on Twitter and other platforms that they may see who don't set very good examples. And importantly, and probably most challenging, is that they think about what they're communicating. So being able to just stop and think, should I be sharing this? How might someone else read this message? What might someone else think if they saw that photo? All of these things. It's a complicated, challenging world for children, but definitely the positives outweigh the negatives. So all of these things will help our children to be more confident in the online space. So that's confidence in how they put themselves across. So if we're thinking of teenagers, where potential employers or colleges or universities may well go online and try and find them. And they want to see positive content. They want to see children who are engaged and feel confident about the online space, and aren't posting photos without privacy settings on them, or aren't getting into arguments online that are public. So how can we encourage confident communication? That's really about how we communicate with our children. So fundamentally, it's back to parenting. So how we speak to our children, the expectation that we have of them when they're online. And sometimes it may not be us that they want to come to, and that's quite hard, I think, as a parent. But if something goes wrong, we need to make sure that they have another adult in their lives that they can talk to. So most likely there will be a favourite teacher in the school, someone that they feel they can confide in. So helping children understand that holding on to something when it goes wrong is not the way to sort it out. And that means that you have the opportunity to talk to them about their online world and what's important to them, and other trusted adults can support them to sort things out when things go wrong. And it means that with those confident communication skills, your child will be able to build a positive digital footprint, enjoy those good friendships online. So my children, who are online a lot, will describe other young people online as their friends. These are not people they have ever met. These are people perhaps that they game with, that they're in groups with, who have similar interests to them. Now they are 15 and 18, and I do this job. So I've spent a long time talking to them about, actually you don't know who these people are. But we have to recognise that this plays a big part in our children's lives. So rather than just saying, you should never talk to anyone online that you don't know, we have to have age-appropriate rules. So we have to be saying to very young children, you only play with people that you know. You play with your friends that you know in the real world. As they get older, that is going to change. So we need to equip them with the critical thinking skills, with the communication skills, so that they know what's okay to communicate when they're in a game. So my kind of rule of thumb, I don't know how well that translates into Spanish, but the main rule when children are playing games with people that they don't know is if they're talking to them through headsets or messaging, then if the talk is about the game, then that's not a harmful thing to them. If they get into a position where they are being asked personal questions about where they live, where they go to school, those are the things that we want them to stop and be able to say no to. So one of the things which I'll go on to talk about is making sure that children know how to report people that they don't want in their games, how to block people who they don't want to have contact with. And that's something that we need to understand as well. So part of the Parent Lounge, the digital schools membership area that you'll have access to, we have guides to Fortnight, dare I say the word Fortnight, to Fortnight, to Instagram, to Snapchat, to help you understand, okay, so I know my child is playing this game, and I want to understand who can talk to them, how can they control who's talking to them, how can we control how long they're staying on things, all of those, the functionality that is helpful for communication as well, and helping them have positive people in their lives online. And oftentimes people think about young people online and think social media, and think about Instagram and Snapchat and WhatsApp, but actually particularly for a lot of boys, gaming is their social media. Gaming is the way that they are developing and maintaining their friendships. Certainly for my 15-year-old, that's the most important thing for him and his friends. They play very socially, so they play in groups together. We were talking about Fortnight earlier. I'm happy to answer any questions about any games or apps later on. But Fortnight is a great example of a game that often has parents tearing their hair out. I did a session with some teenage boys and I asked them, what's the one thing that you want parents to know about gaming? And they said, you can't pause Fortnight. And actually, once you know that, it really helps. So Fortnight, it's a very clever game. These games, has anyone played Fortnight? Okay, so a couple of people played Fortnight. It looks great, it's really exciting, you can play it with your friends, but it just goes on and on. If you stay alive, it just goes on, and you will have had the experience of, no, just 5 more minutes, just 10 more minutes, just please, please, please. And that's the main problem for me with Fortnight, is that if they play a game of FIFA, football, you know it's just going to last that length of time. Fortnight, they're like this, they're in a team with their friends, they don't want to let their friends down. So I think actually, from these teenage boys, that was a really good thing that they wanted. Every parent I speak to now, I always say, you can't pause Fortnight, remember that please. But once you know something like that, then that starts to change the dynamic. It means that you are not always bad mum or bad dad because you're coming in and saying stop. You're saying, okay, you can play Fortnight, but not before dinner, not before you've done your homework, not before your chores, when it's a bit more relaxed. So that it kind of just brings us closer to our children. Because certainly in my house, I am bad mum. I am the one that's always saying, put your phone down, switch the PlayStation off, put the tablet down, no, you can't go on there again, no, read a book, all of these boring things that I'm asking my children to do. But if I have a better understanding, I'll see you tomorrow, of the functionality of the game, I know that it's not, if I just switch the games console off, it's the example I give to parents is, my son is in the park playing football, I decide he's had enough and I walk onto the pitch, I take his hand and drag him off the football pitch. And for a lot of, particularly for boys, that's their online space. They are playing collaboratively, socially, cooperatively with their friends, and we come in and say, no, you need to stop. Now, I am not saying that you should just let your children play Fortnight forever. Really, I'm not. But I am helping nudge parents closer to children and have a better understanding of the importance of that part of their lives, and then you can start to put some rules and boundaries in place around that. And maybe sit down and play Fortnight with them. There's nothing my son loves more than beating me on video games, and you can't just hide, which is what I try to do. Just get smaller and smaller and you die. But just having that showing an interest becomes a really important thing, particularly if you've been in the position that I have of being bad mum and just switching everything off. If I can show a bit of interest, that means that I get to find out more about the things that he loves. So the final digital life skill is the tool use. So in the UK, children have been pushed, and parents have been made to think that tech is the answer to tech problems. And what we know from the evidence is actually parents are the answer to tech issues. There are tools that are really helpful, so it's really important that we know how they work and that our children know how to control and manage who they have contact with, who can contact them and protect their devices. But that's about it, I would say. Pretty much every month at ParentZone, a company will get in contact with us and say, we have made the perfect parent app. You can see every message your child sends, you can control everything about what your child does. And actually what we know, the evidence shows that those kinds of apps, if your child is determined enough, just drives that activity underground and you don't know. So they have their phone where you're controlling what they can do and you're seeing everything that they can do. They also have their friend's phone that has no controls on it. Or as they get older, they buy, what do they call them, burner phone. They buy a second cheap phone so they can do the things that they don't want you to see. And you lose that trust. So our approach is, there are some tools that are really helpful, and these are the tools that we want our children to know how to use as much as us knowing how to use them. And the reason why is that we worry that they might be sharing too much personal information, that they might be being contacted by people that make their online life unhappy, and they may not be protecting their devices. So these are the tools that we would say it's important to know. And you'd be surprised, some children do not have auto lock on their phone. It's a basic thing, but definitely a thumbprint or a password or a code of some description, it's a basic must-have. Making sure that they understand how to set a good password, that they share their passwords with you so that you can help them if they get locked out of accounts, but they do not share them with other people. Our experience is teenagers sharing passwords to Instagram accounts is a kind of sign of intimacy. So maybe with a new partner, boyfriend or a girlfriend, you want to show trust and intimacy, you share your password and then it all goes wrong. It's not a good idea to share passwords. Making sure that you and children and young people understand privacy settings. So some of them are not very sophisticated, Instagram, public or private, but things like ghost mode on Snapchat, children should know how to turn off the location on Snapchat. All of this information, in case you're feeling slightly overwhelmed by all of this, is in the parent lounge. So there's a guide to Snapchat, know how to switch off location-based services, all of those sorts of things. Making sure that when children are gaming, when they're on social media, that they know how to block people and that they feel confident that if they block or report someone, that's done anonymously. The other person does not know, and lots of children don't know that, and so they don't do it because they think, oh, he's going to know that it was me. But those tools are there in place so that children have more control over who's contacting them, who they're playing with, who they're communicating with, and knowing how to report. So I imagine, as in most schools, that the trusted adults that you turn to are the teachers. So we know that as parents, as much as we're encouraging children to talk to trusted adults, we need those trusted adults in this space as well. So being able to talk to each other, really important. Knowing the rules that each other sets, but also knowing how to report if something does go wrong, so that you can get more support. Important for your children and you, as much as for you as for your children. Sometimes children think that, and I'm sure this is your experience, that we want to control what it is that they're doing online. So if we can explain to children and young people that these tools are there to help them, not so much for us to control, but for them to feel in control of what they're doing. Find the tool section. So if your child, particularly with younger children, if they're going onto a new game, lots of sites now will have parent sections. So Roblox is a big website for a lot of children. They now have a parents area that will talk you through all of the safety settings, know how to switch chat off, know how to report, doing a little bit of extra work when your child starts and wants to download a new app or start a new game means that you all start in the same place. And obviously, I hope, setting strong passwords and updating them regularly. Because once you feel confident about them being able to use tools appropriately and feel confident about them understanding the purpose of them, that you'll feel happier about them using social networks, and you'll know how important they are, particularly for teenagers. That if you've got younger children, you'll feel more confident about them having their own devices, because that's where you started from, was a great position of thinking about those tools that are in place, and that they'll be able to use search engines and other ways of finding information when they're online. So we've done quite a lot of work with the Oxford Internet Institute, and one of the people we've worked with there is Dr. Andy Shabilsky. So he carried out, did you translate the reference, a large-scale test of the Goldilocks hypothesis, which looked at, was there a good enough amount of connectivity, of online time for children and young people? And actually what their research shows was that it is better for young people to have some connectivity every day than none at all. And the clue is in the name, social media. So when they are being social, they're keeping their connections, they're checking in with their friends. I sometimes tell children this story. It is better with parents, that when I started in secondary school, so 12 years old, and I met my first best friend, in the evening we would go home and write letters to each other in the evening, and then we'd come to school the next day and share the letters. If I had been on social media, my WhatsApp would have been very full, because that's what young people want to do. They want to communicate with their peers, with their friends, develop new relationships. We need to give them the tools and the skills to do that in the safest way possible, and know that if there are mistakes, actually there are ways of recovering from them, and that there isn't really anything that they can't tell you. There may be things that you don't want to hear, but that's a different thing. So, oh, I skipped too fast. Okay, it's skipping, I don't know why. These are the 3 digital life skills that we want to encourage. Could you show the next slide, the Spanish one? So on the ParentZone website, it's not in the members area, but there is a digital life skills game. So if you have children, I think, kind of under 10, so young children, there is a game that you can play with them together. It's in Spanish, it's in English, and I think 5 or 6 other European languages, that you can work out kind of where they are in their digital life skills. So can they tell the difference between fact and fiction? Can they communicate in an effective way? Do they know the tools? So it's a game that's been designed for families to play together with young children. It's not going to work with 16-year-olds, I can tell you that, but certainly with younger children. And in fact, if you go onto the ParentZone website, parentzone.org.uk, as well as the Parent Lounge, we have a hub of materials that are translated into European and world languages. So we have resources that we have developed with international companies. There's a game on there that you can play with very young children, which is in Spanish, and the digital life skills is also translated into Spanish.